In my last video about A Little Space, my top-down 2D space game about going fast through platformer-style levels, I covered how I spent the last few months of 2025 moving the game from Unity to Godot, and basically rebuilding the game from scratch. So by that point I had most of the core game systems up and running, as well as first versions of all 5 levels for the first world, but it was all still pretty unpolished. One of my main goals for the first half of 2026 was to make, playtest, and release a public demo, which at the time of posting this video has just gone live on Steam, so if you're at all interested in the game, please click the link down in the description and give it a shot. It includes those first 5 levels of the first world, and takes around 20 to 30 minutes to complete, or probably a bit longer if you go for 100% completion. But as for the rest of this video, there have been quite a few changes to the game from the end of last year to now, so let's have a run through some of the biggest ones. First up was a basic dialogue and cutscene system. The game isn't at all narrative focused, but I do want it to have some story to give context and motivation for the player. And there aren't going to be any non-player characters moving around in the world, since isolation is a theme of the story, so I didn't need anything too sophisticated for cutscenes, but I felt like just being able to move the camera around to focus on things would be a good way to help guide the player early on. So I added some UI for a dialogue box, and used Godot's resources to create cutscenes which I can read from to write out dialogue line by line, as well as showing a name and icon for the current speaker. And so now when you start the game for the first time, you get a short cutscene explaining the overall story. You play as Riley, a young astronaut on her first deep space mission to repair a warp relay, one of a network of relays which allow humans to travel around the galaxy at light speed. But before she can get there, her ship gets hit with a surge of energy which knocks her out of warp and cuts her off from communication with Earth. So you need to reboot the relay where she's been stranded so she can use it to warp back home. There are also a few more cutscenes scattered throughout the demo, which use those camera pans to guide you along, like this one which plays after you complete the first set of levels. In the old Unity version of the game, I made it so that 100% completing a level rewarded you with a skin, which you could equip to recolor your ship. I also toyed around with having secret objects hidden within the levels which contributed to that completion, but I never got too far with implementing those. For the new version, I decided to merge those two ideas together. So now every level has a secret area, like this one in the first race level, where you might notice this turret obstacle which is outside the walls of the level, and flying into this specific barrier reveals it to be fake and reveals the rest of the secret area. If you make it past all the obstacles in a secret area, you'll find some kind of object at the end which is different in every level, like this totally original handheld gaming device. And bumping into it unlocks a skin based on the colours of the object, and shows a short description which is a bit of extra context from Riley. The idea is that all of these items have some significance to Riley as a character, so finding them gives you a bit of extra insight into her, as well as just unlocking a ship skin. Then, when you exit the level and return to the hub world, the secret object you found now also appears next to the level teleporter. And they're all physics objects, so you can push them around and knock them into each other, or maybe even have a little zero gravity kickabout. To equip your newly unlocked ship skin, I added a new UI tab to the upgrades menu, which lists all the available skins, including previews and their descriptions as shown on the secret found screen. And once you've equipped a new skin, it also shows in the dialogue box during cutscenes, and is applied to the full rocket version of the ship, which you see in loading screens. One bit of feedback I got from playtesting the demo was that even after I added a reward for beating a level's target time, as you can see it now gives you an upgrade point, players still weren't incentivized to replay levels to try to beat their target times, since they could just progress either way. I'm the kind of player who completes every side objective in every game I play, because apparently I just can't be satisfied until I've got 100% completion in all achievements, but it turns out not everyone has that problem. And that caused a few issues, like some players completing the first 2 tutorial levels by moving slow and cautious to avoid getting hit, which meant they were barely getting used to the movement mechanics, and so ended up struggling way more than they should have with the later, more difficult levels. And that way of playing also kinda goes against my whole pitch of this being a game about going fast. My failed attempt to encourage players to try the target times by offering upgrade points as rewards just ended up causing its own problems too. Completing the first 4 levels of the demo without beating any target times left you with 4 upgrade points, which still wasn't enough to afford the first upgrade, which cost 5. So less skilled players would reach the final, most difficult level of the demo without a single upgrade, and that final level is designed to test the player's movement. So combining their lack of upgrades with their cautious approach to the previous levels was a bit of a recipe for disaster. Long story short, I needed players to practice moving fast by beating the level's target times, but soft reward incentives just weren't cutting it. So my solution was to add an extra requirement to completing a set of levels. Now, after completing the first 2 levels, instead of the door in the hub world immediately opening and letting you progress, you need to go and interact with the door's lock to open it. And to do that, you're required to have beaten the target time in at least one of those 2 levels. Then later on, it's the same for the second set of levels. You need to beat the target time on one of them before you can attempt the boss level. So this change means that players will always be able to buy one upgrade before reaching the 5th level, and should have a much better handle on their ship's movement. Most of the rest of the changes were a bit less interesting, so I'll just quickly run through a few of them. I added a main menu with the game's new logo, which I made while filling out the Steam page, and there is of course now a fully fledged save system with 3 available save slots, which show their completion percentages and total play times on the main menu. There's also an options menu with some standard display and sound settings, plus the ability to rebind your controls, both on keyboard and mouse and on controller. And that pretty much covers all the significant changes from the start of the year to the release of the demo. Again, the link to the Steam page is down in the description, so please try out the demo and let me know what you think, either down in the comments or by reviewing it on Steam. It's not exactly a graphically demanding game, so it should run pretty well on most Windows PCs and laptops, and it also runs very nicely on the Steam Deck, if anyone can afford one of those anymore. But otherwise, remember to add a little space to your Steam wishlist if you haven't already, and subscribe here for future devlogs as I start working towards the full release.